What happens when you purify your body, your mind, your spirit? Something miraculous. The body begins to heal itself. Welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast, where each week we explore new ways to heal your body from the root, igniting your inner healer. You are the medicine. And now, here's your host, Robin Stebbins.
Hello and welcome to the Medicine Girl podcast. It's me, your host, Robin Stebbins, and today I have the honor of having Paul Zolman, an extremely patient man who is here to talk about the role of love. And so, Paul, I'm just going to hand it right over to you and let you introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about how you came to designing this role of love.
Great. Thank you, Robin. Nice to be with you today. And it's such a pleasure. It's worth waiting for, that's for sure. Thank you. And I actually designed the role of love to help me overcome some childhood trauma that I had, some abuse that happened in my childhood. And I needed a replacement behavior. So what happened for me was that I learned anger first before I learned love. And by learning anger, you learn how to walk over people, talk when they're talking, interrupt, no boundaries. You talk to smack talk. You put people down so it elevates you, and just all that was all part of the childhood. And so, as an adult, I still had a lot of residual anger from that training. Well, what I would happen was I'd be stacking annoyances. I'd be annoyed, and then I'd have this flash of anger. I wanted to overcome that. And the role of love was the way that I was able to do it.
Interesting. So do you mind talking about a little bit about what the trauma was? Because I think it's important for people to see that, it not to stay stuck in traumatic events that happened in childhood, but that we're meant to heal them, overcome them, and use them as fuel for, encompassing all the whole that we are.
Absolutely. I agree with that, Robin, that it really did become the fuel. And the anger that I had, started being angry at things that I was doing. At first, though, I was blaming my father. Up until probably about age 35, I was still blaming my father for all these awkward moments. If you get angry in public, it's like the person that has an accident in the swimming pool. Everybody scatters and they say, not me, not me, not me. And it was me. And it was just interesting that I did not want to repel people like that, but I wanted to have the personality that would draw people to me. And so I tried to realize what was it that did that. And mostly it was just physical abuse, but there was a lot of verbal abuse, sexual abuse. I mean, there were lots of different kinds of emotional abuse, a lot of different kinds of abuse that were going on in the home. And I just really had to put a stop to everything that I could in that direction. But what really helped me was just changing focus and looking, instead of looking at what's wrong with people, I started looking at what's right with people and realized that people are mostly good, really mostly good, maybe 80, 90% good. There might be 10 to 20% that's bad or that we've got weaknesses or faults about. But mostly people are good. And I was missing the largest part of the people, the largest part of their personality by focusing on what's wrong with that person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier to do, to focus on what's wrong, especially when that's our programming from the beginning and the way we grow up. That's how you see the world. It's really hard to change that programming. So what were some of the steps that first made you realize that you were in a lower frequency anger state? And then it's like, where do you even start?
Yeah, that was my question too. Where do I even start? First declaration that I made, Robin, was that I don't want to be angry. And it's kind of like a double negative. And I realized that double negatives work really well in math, that you can multiply two negative numbers by each other and then received a positive number. It doesn't work in relationships. And I realized that. And so the steps that I had to take was I had to have some dramatic events in my life that just were more shocking than anything else, because when you're in an angry society, shock and awe doesn't work as well because you're already been there, you've already done that, and it's not as awesome, it's not as shocking as most people when they hear shock and awe. And it was just something like that in my life. My father, at age 35, my father had been dead already for 7 years, and that wake up call was just, well, how can I blame a person that's dead for my problems? And as I realized that, I realized, oh, I'm responsible for my own stuff. And from that point on, I started making that turn around. And when you stop blaming someone and stop blaming that event, then you have an opportunity to move away from that traumatic event. But you can't do anything until you stop blaming. Stop being the victim. Stop having that mentality of that victimitis. And once you stop having that mentality, even with post-traumatic stress, any kind of stress, any kind of trauma, you're able to move on from there when you stop blaming.
Yeah, and how did you discover that? Because there's a lot of, and I just had a guest on yesterday who was talking about the role of psychotherapy and clinical psychologist, psychiatrist. And I got my undergraduate degree in psychology. And what we learned was it's the 1/3 rule. 1/3 get better, 1/3 stay the same, and 1/3 get worse, no matter what treatment you use, even if you don't use a treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically saying this whole field is not working. And when you go into, let's say you had this childhood trauma and let's say you went into a clinical psychologist, they would want to do talk therapy for years and focus on all of the traumatic things that happen and how much of a victim you are. If you went to a psychiatrist, they'd want to give you prescriptions and, maybe psychoanalyze you. And, you go into whatever sector, it's just going to keep you in a hamster wheel. So can you address how you were able to get out of that hamster wheel and take responsibility?
That's a great question, Robin. And I love that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 rule. I've never heard that before, but I've talked all around it. And I've talked about it because I felt it. I felt exactly that I had three choices, that I could get worse, I could stay the same by still blaming, or I could get better. I could choose to be educated about love and about the love languages. I already knew all the vocabulary of anger. I already knew all the humor of anger. All that was part of the culture that I grew up with. So I needed a new culture, basically. It's just like moving from Japan to the United States or China to the United States. It's a brand new culture. It's a new start in life. That's exactly what I needed. And what happened for me is about 15 years ago, I was single at the time, and I was getting serious with a girl, and it was time for big brother approval. I'm number 10 of 11 children, so in growing up, I really had no say. I was the remote control, Robin, the human remote control at the time. And it was back in the day when you had to walk up to the TV, turn the knob, and change the channel. All my brothers or sisters, well, one sister and all brothers that are older said, because I had shorter legs, and they'd give me all these excuses why I had to go up and change the channel for them. And so that was the day. But I needed big brother approval for this woman I was dating, or just kind of as a courtesy. Took her up 300 miles north with me to my brother's house. First thing that happened was that we go inside, and my sister-in-law pulls her aside and says, the only emotion that the Zolman family learned growing up was anger. At first I denied it. I said, then it made me mad. And I thought, I've been busted. And I realized at that point that I've got an opportunity here and now to change that perception of the whole Zolman family, at least for myself and for my posterity, that I could change that perception just by becoming a different person and try to distance myself from that anger. So I started reading the color code and the 5 love languages, and I really settled on the principles of the 5 love languages by Dr. Gary Chapman, because he had mentioned that he was a pastor, and mentioned that they reconciled to the life of Jesus Christ. Of course, I did my own little fact check. I'm a Christian and wanted to move in that direction to become a better person. I thought that was a good way to do it. So I liked the principles. I didn't get his application. Remember where I came from, though, because the anger doesn't understand love. Love can kind of understand anger and they have the empathy for it, but anger really doesn't understand love. So I didn't get it. You mean, Dr. Chapman, that if I guess what Robin's love language is and I cater to that, you're calling that love? I came from an unloving environment. How can you call that love? That's more like manipulation. It didn't set well with me, and it didn't work for me. I'm a bad guesser. I couldn't even guess what your love language is at that point in time. Now I'm a little bit better guesser, but it's at the time I just wasn't. The second thing that Dr. Chapman has is that, well, if you take this survey, you can find out what your love language is. Then what do I do with that, Robin? What am I supposed to do? Advertise? Hello, Robin. I'm Gifts. What do you have for me today? I could make buttons like that and just just everybody would buy them. I'm sure this is my love language, and they could advertise like that. That's just so awkward. This wasn't working at all either. So I thought, you know what? Even as dysfunctional as our family was growing up, we liked games, and games brought our family together. So I thought, I wonder if I could make this a game. And so I contacted Dr. Chapman, asked him if he was licensing those little icons that he had for the love languages, the little pictures that identified with each love language. And his attorney wrote back and said, no, we're not doing that at this time. So I had a friend that was a copyright attorney here in town, so I took that idea to him, and he said this. He said, theory, like the love language theory, is not copyrightable. Application is. So with that, I was able to make my own icons and then create a cube. So on the cube, I've got each one of the love languages. There you see a hand holding a gift. That's gifts. Two hands touching each other. That would be touch. Two hands forming a heart, and then a conversation fly out from that heart. Those would be the words from the heart. A hand holding an hourglass representing time, and then a hand holding a platter representing service. 6-sided the die is surprise me. On that day, you're just doing random acts of kindness. So just 2 instructions, Robin. You roll the die every day. Whatever it lands on, that's the love language you practice giving away all day that day. So through this process, I realized that I can't bid anybody to love me. Even if I told somebody what my love language is, it gets to that unintended, just whiny voice that says, well, I told you how to love me. How come you're not doing it? And I didn't even want to go there. So I realized, what do I have control over as it relates to love? And I realized that I can only give it away, and I can only respond when it comes my way. Those are the only 2 things I have control over. So I realized, and I'm single at the time, I'm realizing I don't have a significant other like Dr. Chapman suggests for this. Who am I going to love? And then it just dawned on me, well, I'll just have to love everybody. And it was perfect because it's a consistency that had to happen all day long. I needed that consistency to change the habit, to change from watching for what's wrong with people to now watching for what's right with that person and what can I love about that person, and focus on that and send love out all day long. What I was watching for also is that I'm watching for people to light up. When they light up, now I don't have to go through the process, say, excuse me, could you pause this relationship so I can have you take this survey so I know how to love you? You just watch with your observation skills.
So can you give us a few examples of people that have kind of transformed with this game and sort of how the game works, or the rolling the dice works?
Yeah. So you just roll the die. Say, for example, that you roll touch. So obviously you're not going to be able to touch everybody, but you can do the high five, the fist bump, the pat on the back above the waist, obviously, and those type of things, or the hug, depending on the relationship there. People are, and if they want a hug, you can ask people if they would like a hug. And
so you roll the die in the morning. Let's say you have your morning routine, and so you roll the die, and that you roll the 2 hands touching. So that's your work for today.
That's what you're doing all day long. So
Okay.
it kind of sets a theme for the day, more of a purpose for the day. No longer is your day willy-nilly. You've determined in the morning that you're going to love all day long, everybody, all day. And it's not like I did the dishes, woohoo, I'm done. It's not an event anymore. It's a full process, and that full process really changes you within, and changes the whole mindset. I needed that. I needed that replacement mindset, and this really worked well for me. 30 days doing that, you'll know all 5 love languages backwards and forwards. And the best part about that, Robin, is that you can see it now. You've got those communication skills. You can see it when it comes your way. It gives you that peripheral vision that hardly ever anyone else has. Most people, as Dr. Chapman said, and as he identified, have their own primary love language, and they give that away in hopes of receiving it back. To me, that's a transaction. You're asking for reciprocity, and that's not going to work. It's not going to work for love. It's not let's make a deal. This is not a reality show. This is it.
I love that, because it works for like the internal locus of control versus the external. And so when you have that external, you're always seeking. You're always seeking the next person to fill the hole. And I think you and I both know at this stage, that's just going to have disastrous results every single time for everything. Whatever you're seeking externally to fill this internal void will never work. I call it the hungry ghost.
That's a great name for it. And I love that you said internal, external, because you'll notice that you ROLL outside of you. You roll the die or you roll the cube outside of you. ROLE, like roll of love, that how I spell it, changes you within.
Ooh, I like that. And then, so what about people that are single and are practicing this? What is a great way for them to not get on another hamster wheel of seeking, but to be able to bring that inward and start being able to have that understanding that, to stop chasing and stop like saying, like you said, I like that. You have that whiny voice, like, this is how you have to love me and nobody's doing it. And, I hear from people that I work with through coaching, I hear them say these things a lot.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Robin. I created this when I was single. So it's something that I felt like after 23 and a half years of marriage and then the divorce of that, I felt like I needed to improve myself. The anger I had was contributory to the demise of the marriage. It wasn't the whole thing, and it wasn't the biggest thing, but it was definitely contributory to the marriage. And I think that this, for single people, really is an improvement step that they can take. It's improving themselves within instead of chasing that without. And I found that same thing, that it's just kind of semantics, but it's really important that instead of looking for love in all the wrong places or anywhere, just instead of looking for love, send it out. And it'll come unabated. So when you're sending this out, Robin, you're sending it out without any expectation that it's coming back to you. And the reason you're doing that is because that's really unfettered, untethered. There are no strings attached to this love that you're sending out. You get in the habit of doing that, you become a kinder person. You're just doing it just because.
Yeah. Well, I think that is actually what love is.
Absolutely.
Love is unconditional.
Yeah.
And so
if you're sending it out without any expectation, you're trusting, though, the laws of the universe, the law of the harvest, karma, the law of attraction, the law of reciprocity, the law of polarity, whatever you want to call it. Those laws are already in place, regardless of what you do. It's already going to come back to you. Just think of this: if you send out anger, that's a boomerang. That boomerang gains height, and as it comes back to you, it comes back with greater velocity. You're going to get it 10 times worse back if you send out anger. Don't be sending out that boomerang. You don't need it. I like to compare it to a magnifying glass, that whatever you magnify is going to grow bigger. Why do we focus on the problems of people? That's that if we focus on their problems, what are they going to focus on for us? They're going to focus on our problems. Why do we do that? I mean, and we do it all the time. And I think that part of the reason why we do that is the media does it. And the media trains us to do that. Or if we're looking at the media, that trains us to do it. Thank goodness for Facebook that shows only the kind stuff, only the good stuff. And it really is altered reality all the way to the opposite end. But it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. But I agree with you that what you focus on gets bigger. And yeah, that's what we see to a large extent. I'm wondering though, with Facebook, most people end up feeling bad instead of inspired. I wonder what the difference is, because I believe it's by design, because we're easier to rule and control when we're in a low frequency state. And low frequency states are anger, jealousy,
Right.
Shame, guilt, what all of those things. So I don't know what that disconnect is, but anyway, that's probably for another show. What about self-love? How does this relate to self-love and increasing that within yourself?
That's a great question, Robin. And I really have thought a lot about self-love, and it's really a lot different. I want to just make a statement here. It's a whole lot different than self-indulgence. That really is not self-love. So the way that you feel loved in this new way of loving, this way I've discovered that loving really it's a lot better way. When people light up and you make their day, you get that satisfaction that you've helped somebody on their way. That is how you feel loved, and that is how you feel that you're an important person. To that person, you're very important. You made their day. And if you keep doing that, you're going to have 4 or 5 incidents of that happening every single day by sending out love. Not everybody's going to respond to the love language that you're practicing that particular day, but those people that light up, it makes their day. And that's how you're going to feel that love, that satisfaction that really comes from loving anyway. And I consider that the best self-love that there could possibly be out there. It's not indulgence. This is something that comes really kind of unabated, but it's a reward, so to speak, for just sending love out there.
Yeah, I like that, because I think we're programmed to just have this to be a good consumer, which is the me.
Mm-hmm.
And I, again, back to the hungry ghost, get a manicure, take a bubble bath, whatever those things are. That's not forms of self-love, but more just the external need to salve the inside. So, and I think there's probably, more facets to self-love. I think it's taking care of yourself, being, in your ideal weight, eating good, organic, nutritious foods, that type of thing.
Absolutely.
It's like the physical, and then there's being of service. And I think that gets overlooked so often. And so how with the dice, or the die is just one?
Just one.
Yeah. So with the die, how does that start to bring about those deeper levels of service? Because touch, I could see that, especially in today's culture, that can get really sticky with some people.
It could, or you could just find someone that wants to create a fancy handshake, a handshake that has 10 steps to it.
Yeah.
And when you see that, you know that those people have a connection. And that's the whole idea, is you're trying to make a connection either with touch, and those people, it's fun to watch those kind of handshakes, or even the chest bumps that the football players have after they make a touchdown or do a great play. I mean, it's just any kind of touch like that. And I think that there's a lot of different ways to touch that is absolutely non-romantic. And what we're looking at here, Robin, is really stair steps. You remember how I told you that I was stair-stepping each one of those annoyances on top of another until I had enough. The straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, is when that flash of anger would happen. Likewise, we're stair-stepping these kindness on top of kindness on top of kindness to get to the higher laws of love. The higher laws like forgiveness or intimacy or charity or compassion or mercy or empathy or sympathy. Any of those are higher laws of love. These are the basics. And we really all need to learn these basics. And we've forgotten that. And I think that we want that higher law of love, but we're not willing to do the work to get there. This is that connector for you to be able to stair step to get to those higher laws of love. And I think that that's really what needs to happen, whether you're single or in a relationship. It needs to happen. And you can do this every single day. Just be decent, be kind, and be loving. You'll see those opportunities for those higher laws as they come up.
I agree. Yeah. And I know touch is so important to human beings. If infants aren't touched, they call them failure to thrive. They don't survive without touch. And I think we're just, we're no different. We've just learned to cope better. So I think it is important to find those friends and, start embrace. I see a lot of married couples that don't embrace or have any physical kindness or touch. So that would be important to start looking around you to see how could I get more of that. I like the fancy handshake too. I have a 16-year-old son, as I mentioned. They like to do some of them are 20-step handshakes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, so what? Go ahead.
I was just going to say I've never been coordinated enough to be able to do all. Can't remember stuff. I couldn't even do patty cake with my sisters. I mean, it was just I was not coordinated that way.
Well, it just takes practice, Paul.
I imagine.
So what about can you give another because I find this fascinating with the die. What other let's say you roll what's another one that you could roll that would have you do like a step ladder too?
So there was a couple that I've worked with here that he knew that she liked words and didn't like gifts. One day he rolled gifts on the cube, and he was, what am I going to do? Then he had the thought, I'll write her a note and put it in a box and wrap it up for her. She was absolutely delighted for something like that. She did not particularly like gifts, but when she opened it up and saw it was a note and that it was the words, she was ecstatic, and it really made her day. And that's what we're talking about. Another example is that there was this family that they had 5 children, and I was just kind of testing it with the family, see how that worked with the dynamics. And this family particularly chose to have each child and everyone individually roll the die instead of rolling it one die as the family and say, family, we're working on this. So each individual got to roll the die. The youngest was 4 years old and a boy. And one day he rolled physical touch. And he's jumping up and down, pumping his fist like this, said, yes, physical touch, physical touch. Immediately he goes, beats up on his brothers. And he thought, it must have happened that's how he felt love from his older brothers. But the mother was trying to suppress all the laughter, saying, oh, I wasn't expecting that. But suppressing that laughter and looking at it as a teaching moment, say, no, son, this would be appropriate physical touch. You can hug them. You can give them a high five. You can do the handshake. You can do the fist bump. You can do all those things and tell him what he can do in that regard. And it was a great teaching moment because all their other siblings were right there as she was able to make that teaching moment profound for all the children.
Yeah, interesting. Well, and that's a sticky one because that you have to say, that might have been your love language with your brothers. And I think we're so used to just allowing that to happen instead of redirecting it and saying, here's a nicer way to connect with your brothers. It sounds like you're really wanting to connect your brothers and have that rough and tumble, but maybe direct that energy into something more sportsmanlike, go outside and play football or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they can redirect it. So we're getting towards the end of our podcast. Where can people find you? Tell us how they can get this die and good ways to practice it. Should they be journaling when they do the?
Good question, Robin. So I do have a book that is available that can be kind of an instruction manual, so to speak, but it's just a really short read. Probably read it within a couple hours. It goes over each one of the roles of each one of the love languages, and then a few other things that talks about being authentic, talks about being the role of observation, those type of roles, as well as are being part of love. You can journal it. I do have a journal that I put together that has what you rolled, opportunities you saw to love in that way, what you did about those opportunities. Really becomes a pointed journal, at just a love journal. I would have loved to have a love journal like that from my mother or my grandmother. Instead, I got a journal about the weather. The weather 60 years ago. Who cares what the weather was like 60 years ago? I guess climatologists would. I can hand my journals over to them. There we go. But they can find all that. I have it in a bundle package for $29.99 right now. It's on sale, about 20% off any other place that you could find it. But it's the die, the book, and the journal for $29.99. A whole lot less than just one therapy session, and this is going to last you a whole lot longer too. So it's all at roleoflove.com, ROLE of love.com.
And the links are right down there below us. All you need to do is click on it. So basically, if I'm kind of gathering all this information and summarizing it correctly, this is a way it doesn't matter what happened in childhood.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter your traumas. It doesn't matter your rocky road to where you are right now. This is simply getting you into a state, one of the highest frequencies that we can be in, which is love, and using it in a daily practice so that you become that.
Yeah, it's absolutely a tool to get you there.
And so when you're in that frequency, what are some things though that we can expect to start seeing transformed in our lives? And what is the process? I know it's different for everyone, but we're so programmed to want a quick fix, a one and done, like, oh, I'm going to read this book, I'm going to roll the die for 6 weeks, and then I'm fixed and cured, and I'll be in a state of love and light and bliss.
Yeah, not exactly, Robin. That's a nice ideal, but it doesn't happen that way. Actually, I created the die probably about 2015, and when I created it about 2015, and when I created it, it was really clunky. It was like 2.5-inch block of wood, and then I found a manufacturer. It's actually manufactured in Poland. They're really known for artisanship, for their ceramics and that sort of thing. So the thing about this, as I created it, it was just looking for a way to just become better. And as I'm doing that, it's realized that this is a daily thing. 30 days. It only really took me 30 days to change the attitude, but to keep that same attitude of watching for what's right and what the good about other people, to keep that attitude, I just had to continue rolling the die, and I still roll the die today. I rolled physical touch today, and so it's just something that happens. I say my prayers in the morning, roll the die, and then I'm off for the day, just taking off and purposely going about doing the best I can, trying to love everybody that I come in contact with. It's not, like I said, it's not I've done the dishes, I'm done. It's not going to happen that way. This is to provide the consistency for love in your life. If you want that consistency of love in your life, you've got to put out this effort 2 seconds of the day. For 2 seconds, who can't make a 2-second investment? And for that investment, you are going to get huge returns for that 2 seconds that you spend to set the tone for the day. one other thing about that is that you'll notice on the cube, they're all pictures. If I had words on there, it wouldn't mean as much. The picture kind of makes that memory hook for you to be able to remember all day long what you rolled. That's why I was able to just tell you what I rolled earlier today. It's probably been 3 hours ago that I rolled it.
Oh, perfect. Well, here's a virtual hug for you.
No, thank you so much. I like that. Here's a high five.
High five. All right, Paul Zolman. Again, everyone, the links if you want to get the book and the die and the journal, which I think the journal would be good to see your progress, to see, all the changes that you're making when you embody love instead of the lower vibration frequencies, get into that higher vibration and then see what happens in your life.
I love that. Thank you, Robin. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.